Good evening, you're watching the Urban Debate with me, Avni Raja. On the show, I'll get you an all-rounded view of the day's top stories along with expert analysis. Our top focus, the FIFA fiasco and the huge embarrassment for India after being stripped of hosting the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup for violation of FIFA statutes. Another big story we're focusing on is the student suicides in Tamil Nadu, which has led to some schools trying to absolve themselves in such cases. The big question, can schools simply recuse themselves so easily? Our third focus is the continuing inflationary pressure on the common man, a spike in milk prices. This despite a marginal dip in both retail and wholesale inflation. And with yet another targeted killing, we'll also talk about the security situation in Kashmir. But let's first begin with our top story. India has been banned by FIFA and stripped of the right to host the Under-17 Women's World Cup. This is a big embarrassment for India. In its statement, FIFA has said, and I quote, "The Bureau of the FIFA Council has unanimously decided to suspend the All India Football Federation with immediate effect due to undue influence from third parties, which constitute a serious violation of the FIFA statutes." End of quote. Now, FIFA has also said that the suspension would be lifted only when AIFF administrators regain full control of the body's daily affairs. The AIFF ran into trouble earlier when former President Praful Patel overstayed his tenure until the top court ousted him. Post this, a committee of administrators then took over the AIFF.
It is very humiliating for the entire footballing fraternity of India, and this is not the way we should go ahead. We should understand that FIFA worldwide doesn't accept any third-party intervention in the administration of football, and I think the court and COA has to understand that the court has to take necessary action to immediately remove any intervention from COA or from the court and let AIFF function independently.
Very unfortunate that FIFA has banned Indian football, and at the same time I feel it's a very harsh decision from FIFA to ban Indian football. But at the same time I think it's a great opportunity to get our system right. And it's very important that all the stakeholders, be it federation, state association, sports ministry, to come together, get the system right, and everybody work for betterment of Indian football.
बहुत ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। ये बहुत बड़ी बात है इंडिया के लिए। भारतवर्ष एक इतना बड़ा देश है और बहुत बड़ा हब है। हब मींस अगर आप फुटबॉल का अगर देखते हैं पूरे वर्ल्ड में, तो भारत एक ऐसा देश है जो तरक्की कर रहा है अब आस्ते आस्ते, और फीफा ने बहुत गलत कदम उठाया है। ये होना नहीं चाहिए। फीफा नो डाउट कभी पैसे देती है फेडरेशन को चलाने के लिए, लेकिन उससे कोई फायदा नहीं। जब तक इंडियन गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्व नहीं होगा, स्पोर्ट नहीं बढ़ेगा। हमारे देश में बहुत अच्छे अच्छे प्लेयर्स हैं, लेकिन फुटबॉल में बढ़ावा नहीं मिल रहा।
Gaurav Gupta of the Times of India is joining us here on the broadcast. Thank you very much, Gaurav, for speaking to us. Your, perspective, if you can take us through what this really means now going forward, and the fact that this has been something that's been hanging over, the association's head for a while now, and finally it has come down.
Yes, very good evening to you and all our viewers. See, I think to begin with, this problem started when Mr. Praful Patel did not conduct the elections of the AIFF in, I think, December 2019. He postponed those elections on some pretext. And I think that's where the problem started. And then things kept getting worse. And, there was a lot of discontent in the AIFF, I think in the Delhi Soccer Federation and a few other federations, soccer associations in India. And eventually that led to a mutiny and, and then eventually we saw the COA Committee of Administrators taking over Indian football, the running of AIFF and, the Supreme Court intervening in the matter. Now, the problem is that football is unlike cricket in that sense that we had a COA ruling over cricket for around 3 years, from I think beginning of 2018 till almost end of 2019, so almost 2 years. And they sort of overstayed their welcome. The 2-member and later the 3-member So this problem, I mean, it's the same problem here. I think the COA, the problem is that the COA has failed to devise a timeline according to the FIFA's needs, and they should have been careful of the fact that when FIFA and AFC were sending them repeated reminders, they sent a delegation here saying that, look, this is not acceptable to us, and we need a solution for this. We need a democratically elected federation in place. Without outside interference. I think that was a big factor which worked against, against the AIFF in this whole deal. And eventually, I think FIFA lost its patience because its timelines were not being adhered to. Repeated reminders were being ignored. So somewhere clearly, the Committee of Administrators has failed to, recognize the need to do this ASAP on an urgent basis, and they have ignored warnings from FIFA and AFC. At the same time, FIFA and AFC have also got to realize that this sport needed cleansing up in India. It needs a huge lot of cleansing up in India because there were things that needed to be rectified. It's a welcome idea to have former India footballers voting, have voting rights in the AIFF. But then the problem is the FIFA statute, the FIFA constitution, the FIFA rules and regulations do not allow for individual voters, as much as I understand. So there are definitely, there are issues there. So what you have to do is you have to go by the FIFA rules and regulations. It's as simple as that. You cannot ignore them, and you cannot just say that it's your law of the land and that's going to be final. Ultimately, you have got to be fall in line with how the rest of the world's associations are functioning, or federations. So definitely a big blow for India.
Yes.
I mean, going forward, tomorrow Supreme Court, I think there's a verdict that Supreme Court is going to give tomorrow, which is going to be pretty crucial in this direction. And I'm also curious that how come this gentleman S.Y. Qureshi, he's now part of the AIFF Committee of Administrators, COA, and today I think he's been appointed as a member of the COA of Indian Olympic Association also. So how come this gentleman is finding his way to be a COA member in all the in all these Committee of Administrators which are running various sports bodies in India? It's a bit strange for me. I'm a bit curious about this, and definitely I don't know whether this is a conflict of interest as well. Somebody being in the COA in football also, and IOA also. So Supreme Court needs to pay attention to these things, and I think tomorrow could be.
Absolutely, Gaurav. Some very valid points that you've raised there as well. Thank you so much for joining us with your perspective. I'm also at this point in time being joined by Chandrasekhar Luthra, sports journalist, and Karan Ambardar, general manager, iOS Sports and Entertainment as well. Chandra, if I can start with you first, in terms of the interpretation of what FIFA constitutes as third-party influence, is there any ambiguity on that front? And if so, what is it?
Well, there is so many aspects into what's happening right now. If you remember 2012, when we came back from London Olympics, and suddenly IOC suspended India for 14 months. During that time, if you calculate, it was for 14 months. It was also when the court intervened and said that you should have a free and fair elections. So these things have been going on. And then later on 2014 or 2016, there are so many Supreme Court verdicts against us, BCCI, when Srinivasan was thrown out, or rather today's sports minister, Mr. Anurag Thakur, was also dismissed as BCCI president. So this has been going on. So what happens, what Gaurav was telling, that AIFF failed to have their elections in 2019. And after that, Mr. Praful Patel, obviously he's like a king and this is his kingdom. Previously, we used to have, kings and their kingdoms till 1947. Sardar Patel came, it all ended. Right now, all these kings and kingdoms are there in the sports federations. So it took quite a while. But again, as I have been telling you, this is not the first time, it is not going to be the last time that FIFA has intervened, because being a AIFF president, you know a lot of people in FIFA. This is what happened during the 2012 suspension of IOA also. We got a letter from the IOC that we have been suspending you. Now you can't participate under your own flag. What happened? Nothing. They had to restore the membership of India, because you can't survive without India. AIFF is standing on the same platform. Mr. Praful Patel, using all his influence, is getting all these letters of suspension. But what happens? But court has to ensure. My limited point is, court is interfering. This is good for the sport, but court has to ensure that all these whatever verdicts come, the following people or the future officials, they should also follow these dictates. It is not just like in 2022 you can follow this, and 2023 if somebody else like Jaisha or Saurav Ganguly comes as BCCI heads, and then they will not follow. They'll come back to the court and they can be disqualified, but still be dictating their terms in BCCI. So that's been a problem with the court rulings. But otherwise, I welcome what is happening right now in AIFF.
Right. Karan, coming to you here, that seems to be, more or less the view that a massive cleanup was really required as far as the AIFF is concerned. And that is what, this entire process is going to do. But my question is this. This is, after India was supposed to host the Under-17 World Cup and all of that, this issue is not new, as we know clearly. But why at this point in time, what is that trigger point that caused it?
I mean, as first of all, I'd like to tell Sir that I hope it's the last time. I hope it never happens again. It's happened for the first time in many decades. Let's hope it's the last time it happens. A much-needed shake-up. Yes, it was required, as everybody has mentioned. It's going to be. I mean, the picture looks very gloomy right now, but I think it's for the greater good. All these changes are happening. Having said that, I mean, as everybody has mentioned, it was a build-up for a lot of things that happened, in the last few years. That eventually we have reached this day when we have been banned by FIFA. The most unfortunate part is that all the domestic leagues are now officially unrecognized. There are many competitions that we won't be able to take part in, and that's very unfortunate, because it's a growing sport in our country. It's something that our country is focusing on, and there's a lot of money being pumped into it, private money being pumped into it. Unfortunately, this big break that comes into picture of football, it's going to hamper Indian football in a very big way, and this is very demoralizing. As a former player, I would say it's extremely discouraging to the players who have been practicing, who've been looking forward to things, and now because of the administrative issues of some people around who are not following the FIFA diktat, they are going to suffer. And it's unfortunate. One can't do anything about it. Just we hope that the ban is not a very extended ban, and also that the fact that the administrators put things in place as per the rules and regulations of FIFA.
Right. Karan, you said that this is going to have a very damaging impact on Indian football, which obviously would be the case given the kind of, what this is going to mean for games and tournaments going forward. But how do you think, we're going to be able to come out of this really after the suspension is lifted?
I mean, we just have to follow the rules and regulations that all the other countries who are a part of FIFA are following. Until then, unfortunately, we'll be out of this, and Indian football will keep on suffering. So you have to act quickly. It's been a while that there's been a lot of back and forth from the last statement that came from FIFA. One of the statements actually that came from FIFA was that we are ready to find a middle ground as well. So I believe that they are ready to take a few steps ahead. I think it's from our side that we need to figure things out and do that quickly, right away, right now. That should be the need of the hour. I mean, it's embarrassing that we were about to host a FIFA World Cup,
yes.
Under-17, of course, but it'll be very unfortunate that it'll be taken away. It's a big thing when a country is stripped off an international tournament. And I don't think with India rising as a sporting superpower, we would like to hear the headlines across the world that we have been stripped of a World Cup. I mean, that's highly unfortunate, and people sitting in the right places should move very quickly right now.
Yes, absolutely. Chandra, this obviously, like you were also pointing out, comes as a huge warning signal that we have to clean up our act when it comes to this entire thing. But now what next? Going forward, what do you foresee in terms of the suspension being lifted and then following that?
Well, there are a lot of suspicions also, what court has been doing. I'm not against, courts in very, very closely, and I was the one who was putting all eggs in, my stories into one basket, and then backing the Supreme Court. But what happened after that? Right now, the way Supreme Court is handling the case, again, this is my observation, that it is not going anywhere. We are stuck somewhere where Supreme Court is not hearing the case, where people like Saurav Ganguly and Jai Shah are there despite being disqualified, are against ruling for last 2 years or more than 2 years, despite all the disqualification. And the same thing should not happen into the other association. Today also, Indian Olympic Association has also been, the Committee of Administrators have also been appointed there. So again, the IOA could also be suspended after this, again like 2012. And AIFF, as my friend was saying there, the only concern is that the FIFA World Cup, Under-17 World Cup should not go away from India, because as a host country, otherwise we cannot qualify. As a host country, our players are getting a chance to qualify, to participate in the Under-17 World Cup. So if that goes away, I have my own hunch that probably that qualification will also go. So that way, yes, we are going to suffer, but it is again for a larger, I would say, changes in the AIFF, which Praful Patel was obviously, he was using as his leadership. He was not obviously a great administrator, or we should be, talking about him. It was his personal property. He was treating it like his personal property, and the way he was handling, I think this is for the greater cause that courts have intervened, but courts has to be consistent and has to, very, very careful, while taking kind of, judgments.
Absolutely, Chandar. Karan, thank you so much for joining us with your perspective. One can only hope that this serves as the much-needed warning signals and red flags, and this entire issue is completely cleaned up from the root when it comes to Indian football.